from Axios. Congress erupts over FBI arrest of Wisconsin judge and blah, blah, blah. I don't really care. The next story is MAGA cheers Wisconsin judge's arrest. Well, because she's a criminal being arrested. So this is here's Rick Wilson saying, oh, I says on. So I think it's a typo. So we're arresting judges now. Good to know. Hey, bro, y'all arrested lawyers first. I mean, okay, I'm not going to. Here's Amy Klobuchar. This is not normal. The administration's arrest of a sitting judge in Wisconsin is a drastic move that threatens the rule of law. While we don't have all the details, it's a grave step and undermines our system of checks and balances. Maybe y'all should not have arrested the front runner for the presidency and his lawyers and his associates.
And his valet.
And his valet. Wow.
You'd think that might occur to them.
Didn't they arrest a janitor?
They arrested everybody they could get their hands on.
Here's Tina Smith. Understand what this is. If Kash Patel and Donald Trump don't like a judge, they think they can arrest them. This is stunning. Yep. We must stand up to this blatant power grab. Republicans, how is not a red line for you? I will not be swayed by psychopathic, evil narcissists who have been gutting and burning this country to the ground because now we have actual accountability. But you know what? The important thing is, the important thing to understand, I should say, there is no off-ramp. Democrats literally set fire to the Constitution. Well, I should say figuratively is how I was using the word literally. Set fire to the Constitution to steal power in this country and lost. And we have to bring about accountability to these people or we are doomed. But you know what? It doesn't matter because Democrats are going to say, no matter what you do, you're Hitler. And stupid people are going to believe it. So welcome to the highway with no off-ramps. All we can do is pedal to the metal, baby.
The off-ramp thing is interesting because it feels like a chrysalis, like we're in the cocoon emerging now into this new creature as the United States. And I don't know, Josie, you're basically a constitutional expert. Do you think that this metamorphosis can sustain?
Well, what I'm worried about is the way that people are interpreting the arrest of judges, because the talking point is he's arresting judges now, because they put him off as being a tyrant. So now they have to prove that he's a tyrant. So just talking to the normal people, saying he's arresting judges now. Who do they hear about judges and Trump? They're hearing about the federal judges who are pushing back and impeding on his executive power, essentially. So they're not thinking that it's judges who are harboring criminals, because that sounds like that's crazy. That's Alex Jones level crazy to them. Like, no, there's no judges harboring criminal aliens. That's not happening. So they're assuming that the judges that are being arrested are the ones who are pushing back against Trump. Those are the ones. It's the federal judges who are pushing back against Trump, and he's throwing them in jail. They don't know that they're aiding and abetting because this is not the stuff being reported.
No, but they're right. Mm-hmm. This judge was pushing back against Trump, trying to create this world that is lawless that Democrats want to live in. So let's put it this way. Shout out to Michael Malice, because he said recently, I love how all these Republicans become anarchists the moment, like Trump should defy the courts because, right, whoever can enforce the law has the power to do so. There are a bunch of laws on the books that we never enforce. Democrats, in their world, we do not enforce deportations. So when you got that law in Florida that says women can't skydive on Sunday, I think that's not really true, but that's the idea. We look at that like, well, that's stupid. Women can skydive whenever they want. So we don't enforce that. No cop's going to arrest a woman for skydiving. Democrats are going, yeah, that's ridiculous. We're not going to arrest a guy because he's not registered and not a citizen. He lives here. He's a Maryland man. So when Trump says we're going to arrest him, to them, imagine a cop arresting a woman for skydiving on a Sunday, and that's how they view what Trump is doing. So that judge is doing the legal thing by letting that illegal immigrant escape because we don't enforce those laws. This is what I'm talking about when I say there's a moral bifurcation in this country, and there is no way to remedy this, and it's a collision course. So how about we try the time travel test once again, so I can rub this in the faces of the naysayers over and over and over again. Go back in time 10 years and describe everything we've seen so far. Well, what's going to happen is Trump's going to get elected president. They're going to accuse him of being a Soviet spy. No, not a Russian spy, a Soviet spy. On MSNBC, they'll say he's been working for the Soviets since the 80s. Then they're going to impeach him. They're going to imprison one of his campaign manager. They're going to then arrest several of his lower staff, accuse his national security advisor of lying to the FBI to try and put him in jail. They will arrest Steve Bannon, Peter Navarro. Then you're going to get The worst lockdowns we've ever seen in 50 years, or total pandemic lockdowns, the worst riots we've seen in 50 years. 1,000 people are going to storm into the Capitol and disrupt the electoral vote count. And now we get to, also, they're going to arrest Trump's lawyer. They're going to arrest Trump himself. They're going to fabricate new laws specifically to go after Donald Trump. Notably on the E. Jean Carroll case, they made a new law in New York just so she could sue him. They will falsely accuse him of 34 felonies, which don't exist and have no underlying crime. They'll falsely accuse him of civil fraud. And then Trump's going to win anyway. And his FBI director will start arresting judges.
That's the white pill. If you gave me the time travel test 10 years ago that he got elected a second time, even despite all that stuff, I'd be like, we have some power as American citizens.
You'd say you were a psychopath and none of that is possible.
Well, not me. I was into it, but other people mostly.
Okay, accepted.
Yeah.
Ian would be like, yeah. They'd be like,
been talking about
machine elves would come too.
Because they kept saying the fall of the American empire is imminent. This is just the way it manifested.
Ultimately, my point is
more of an alteration than a fall.
Every time we do this, imagine going back in time and telling people what happened today. Imagine going back 10 years and saying, when Trump wins his second term, a non-consecutive term, by the way, after they accuse him of being a Russian spy for 10 years, his new FBI is going to start arresting Democrat and liberal judges for aiding and abetting terrorist organizations and criminal cartels and narco gangs, illegal immigrants. People are going to be like, what? That's insane. That'll never happen.
You called this like a moral dilemma. That's what I feel like this is, because it's so much like the Nazi Germany thing with the Jews, the way they were the way they were treating these people as second-class citizens. It's easy for people to fall into that state of mind and just blanket. They already called Trump Hitler for 5 years. So it's really about, I think, gently nudging people's morality towards understanding the danger of mass immigration,
This is the play. The play is, if they defeat Donald Trump, they will have gaslit America and created a new history. That you have undocumented Americans and you have documented Americans. What they're trying to do now is Hitlerize Trump so that if Trump is defeated and crushed, they're going to say, never again will we allow our citizens, our undocumented citizens, to be oppressed and rounded up like this. This is how their plan is to create a system by which in the United States you have undocumented and documented citizens. They've already tried using that terminology. They pulled back a little bit. I believe Hassan Piker on his stream was referring to them as undocumented citizens. That is they tried this. So the goal is we will lie about whatever Trump does. We will make it seem like what he is doing is rounding up the Jews. And then we will argue to all Americans who think it's bad, we can never do this again, which means no more deportations ever.
The Alex Jones has obviously Info Wars, and I've been critical of the name Info Wars, even like Culture War. I'm like, why manifest war? But the reality is this information manipulation is a form of psychological warfare, and people have been using these, what do you want to call it, corporate media, MSNBC, these high-powered fire hoses of data transfer to brainwash people since the inception of the technology, but especially since the advance of the internet. And now there's all these other people delivering knowledge as well. So it is a battle, I guess you could say, of the mind.
Would you say it's information warfare? Yeah,
I think so. Like, I don't want to soften warfare. I don't want to soften the term, but it's definitely like information
civil conflict.
Yeah, what?
When it comes to citizens, how they keep saying citizens, written in the amendments, the 16th, 19th, 24th, and 26th, it says it has the citizens' right to vote in these ways. Those are the voting amendments. So if you want to think of who was ever supposed to vote, it was always meant to be citizens as soon as they involved the federal government.
What was the last part? What'd you say?
As soon as they involved the federal government in voting, because it was always a states' right, it became citizens. So each of the 4 voting amendments say it is the right of the citizens to a citizen who's a woman, a citizen who's a freed slave, a citizen. So,
yeah, I mean, and that because of that, points to the fact that Democrats have been trying to
get citizens so citizens can vote. So these are just undocumented citizens. See, they can still vote.
Which is still just, it's just word games to them. Mm-hmm. But if they can get the American people to kind of just accept that. It becomes
truth.
Yeah, accept that as truth, that would, that will help them to allow actual non-citizens to vote, which is something that we've discussed around the table here multiple times.
Yeah, without cultural cohesion or belief in it, they won't support the law. If people really believe they're citizens, they won't step up to have them.
Let me help you out, Ian. First, generational warfare, line and column tactics, muskets, formal battlefields. Second generation warfare is firepower, mass artillery and trenches, industrialization. Third generation warfare is maneuver, blitzkrieg, strategic attack points. So this is more like World War II. Fourth generation generational warfare, decentralized non-state actors, psychological and information warfare, blurring the lines between civilians and combatants. And finally now, today, fifth generational warfare, information, cyber, psychological, and perception manipulation. There are no clear battlefields, and wars are fought in mines and online more than on land.
Yeah, you get someone to destroy themselves. It's
influence operations, AI warfare attacks, and cyber attacks.
Man, they always say the modern war, you don't want it because you never know how it's going to be. Like World War I, they didn't realize there were going to be machine gun nests, and that's where we're at, staring down this AI manipulation right now.
Isn't it fascinating how wrong? I think it was Einstein, right? Who said, I know for not which weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. Yeah. Boy, was he wrong. Because likely World War III is going to be subterfuge, cyber attacks, and perception manipulation. No, it's not going to be kinetic.
That's the point. The consequences and the cost of a global war, of all-out global war, like a World War I or II was, it's too high, and that's why information warfare is what nation states have defaulted to, espionage and proxy wars and stuff like that.
But I don't think I don't think it's a cost issue. I think it's an effectiveness issue. Cost is a component of that, but it's basically if you could go to Genghis Khan and say, I will conquer all of this land towards Eastern Europe and to Asia, and you will never lift a sword or a bow or a spear. Do you want that? They would say yes.
Yeah, he preferred that. He would, if people would surrender, he'd let them live. He'd integrate them into their.
But with nuclear war, you're ruining the land.
The point is, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's right. Then it's not going. That's why. Well, they don't.
No.
It doesn't happen and so they default to something else.
No, it's not going to happen because it's not as effective as manipulating the entire population into bowing before you. Nuking a country makes that country hate you forever.
Well, it also,
well, maybe not forever. Look, Japan.
But we did kind of invade and take over Japan. Yeah.
So instead of nuking a country, destroying land, it is cheaper, faster, and easier to take over their minds through manipulation.
Oh, especially with decentralized tech. It can happen overnight. An internet video can manipulate 100
social
million
media.
People. Sorry,
I still think that the fact that you spoil the land is a big part of the reason why none of the global superpowers ever actually got into direct conflict. There was proxy wars and stuff like that because those were a better option. And now that proxy wars aren't really, well, there are some proxy wars, but now that information flows so freely, because before the internet, information flow wasn't so that you could use information warfare the way that we did. So you had after the end of World War II until 2000, 2000, just for, when most people in the developed world had computers in their houses. You didn't have the ability to really influence minds over the internet or influence minds with propaganda. The United States was fairly isolated. It used to be militaries that wanted to influence people or populations. They had to either fly over and drop leaflets, or they had to have people on the ground printing newspapers and producing television shows or whatever, having some way to spread that propaganda. Now that the internet is in everyone's home and people can go wherever they want, that makes it possible to actually transmit information.
So the question is, what is the most effective means of warfare? And nukes ain't it.
Not anymore, yeah.
So it's not an issue of we're going to ruin land. No, if we truly wanted to wipe out an enemy, we'd march to the sea. We'd go scorched earth. The issue is it's substantially cheaper to hire a bunch of Turkish dudes with 50 phones each to spam blast a nation and have them turn their country over to you in a couple of years.
That's what concerns me about the industry in China, the shipping the American industry to China over the last 20 or 30 years, because I think this psychological war has been, well, it's been going on since the dawn of time, but it's really ramped up since the age of the internet. And to lose that production capacity, like there's this game, Axis and Allies, wonderful World War II board game, better than Risk. It's not about money. None of the countries ever buy stuff with money. You buy it with production power. If you have factories, you can build troops, you can build, armor, tanks, planes. If you don't have factories, you can't. And that's it. It's called GDP. So without your productive capacity, you're impotent on the global military stage. We need to get those factories back here or build new ones.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.